the React documents are going to be your friend. Like, do not try to memorize everything about React. You will go insane, and then everything will change. Because React is updating. Brent, how many times has React updated in the last like month? Twice or something like that?
So the last time I looked, around 16 or something.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah. It's 17 versions in the last year or so. Maybe 2 years.
I think it's 18 now.
Yeah. It's they update fast, and they change huge things every once in a while.
Okay.
So the documents are where everything is at. Now, the idea is that we can do state within this component. And this is where state is only just a little tiny bit of data that we're storing. So what I can do is, and this is part of OOP, so some of it will be like just do it, and then later on learn OOP and everything, like things will start to make sense, is I need to like initialize state. So I need a constructor. And in this constructor, well, I need to run this super property. This will make absolutely no sense until you learn OP with inheritance. And it's this.super, I believe. Once I've done that, now I can create a this.state equals and set it to be whatever I want. Most people create an object that they could just add in key value pairs to it, sort of like name. And you can set it to be a default value, sort of like and enter your name. To update the state is not as simple as just updating this.state to something else. They have special functions for you to use to do that properly. Otherwise, things just don't work because they're listening for when you update that function so that they can rerun the render function and cause the screen to be updated with the new data. So everything does have a method to its madness. It's a framework / visual library. You're now forced to do it their way. And if you don't, you will hate your life. Mainly because their docs will be like, who knows what you're doing. So I could switch this from hello world and now use not full handlebars, just single handlebars, and reference this.state.name. If I save it, switch over really quickly, you
don't need this for super.
Oh, I don't need this for super. You're right. I keep on dyslexizing which ones I need this for and which ones I don't. Now I have enter your name here. So at this point in time, you could create like a form or something else that will like allow someone to enter your name. You could have some kind of method to go out and grab it from a database. There's lots of ways to do that. I want to, we can do this on-click thing here. So we can create forms are a little bit interesting. I'm not sure if I want to show you forms right now because they might cause your brain to explode, but on this introduction thing. So instead, I want to show you one lifecycle thing. There's like 5 or 6 lifecycle methods that we can add here. Constructor is essentially one of them. This is component did load. And this function will be executed when this component is loaded into the page. There's other ones too. Component is unmounted, component will load. Choosing which one to use is kind of an art and just sort of experimenting around. So feel free to go through the documentation, read which ones are used and what they exist.
What are you called what again?
Life cycle methods. If you go to the documentation, it's just like one giant page. You just scroll down and read through it until you figure out which one looks appropriate. That is nice about their documentation. So if I want to update the state, I cannot say this.state. It won't let me just update it here. So I have to do this.setState. And it's a function that takes an object that lets me sort of set the new state. So name is going to be Brooks. I'm going to save this. Did I not do, is component not load the right one? Oh, it's component didn't mount. That's what it is. I don't know if you noticed it. When I was running that, I was getting weird downloads off my browser. Like, it was literally telling me it was downloading localhost.html. For some weird reason. I don't know why. I did component did load. Yeah. It downloaded. It downloaded a file. Did you switch it to component did mount? Yeah. And save it? Yeah. Okay. I'll take a look at it. And then, all right. The idea is that this is SetState. Now I want to simulate this being like after the fact. Well, I can do that with SetTimeout. That will let me like pretend that I'm going to a database and grabbing something and then setting the state after it. So, SetTimeout. So this one, don't feel like you don't need to do. We need to use arrow functions here. Do you know why I need to use an arrow function?
Something about this.
Yeah, something about this. Arrow functions do not rebind the this keyword, which is what I need for this.setState. So this.setState name Brooks. And let's do 3 seconds. Comes in, enter your name. 3 seconds later, it switches to Brooks. This is the magic of the binding system. It's kind of sort of binding. We're changing the state. When the state changes, it reruns that render function. So, the basics of React. Let's talk about that for a second. What is this like thing that I created called? Like what would we say that's called? Component. Why would we care? Like why would we want to build in these small components?
So you can reuse them other places.
So we could reuse them in other places. Yes.
You break something, you don't break everything.
Unfortunately, in React, it will probably break everything because I don't know if you noticed when I had a bad it puts it all into one file. So everything will be broken.
Yeah.
The sharing thing is huge. There's one other benefit. Think about it for a couple seconds. What is another potential benefit of putting things in these folders and these components?
Organization.
Organization. I would like to hear the next one from someone else. I know, no, it's good. It's just okay. So, what is state in React? I don't know your names, so I'm just going to have to sort of point. So, what is state in React?
You're asking the wrong guys.
That's okay. That's okay. Can you guys answer what is state in React?
It's like setting variables and having the value be the state, and so you can just switch back to that state.
Yes. And the biggest thing for that is the state available in any other component? Is this state available in any other component? I haven't heard from you yet.
No, so you have this state here that is separate from the state that you have in another component.
Yes, exactly. So it is isolated to this component. And that's one of the key factors of a front-end framework is that there's this, it's not necessarily privacy, but there is this ability to know that no other component can have access to that. This can also be a problem.
So so that I'm like understanding this, what you're doing here is you're setting like the original state to have this name key that has a value of enter your name to start, and then you're calling this, you're mounting this component, and you're setting to say 3 seconds later you're going to set the state where it's going to change that name to Brooks.
Yes, exactly.
And so so after 3 seconds, it's changing the state, or specifically the name within that state, to Brooks.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is where it's just like doing this over and over again and playing with it, I think is really important. And I would not necessarily jump into the drills for front-end frameworks until you just build 1 or 2 of these apps up and just play with creating 1 or 2 components and importing them into each other. So one last thing I want to show you, because this is where things get a little bit interesting, is, in case they're not already interesting, is that we can pass data from components to components. Because otherwise, we can.
Okay.
We can. Now, we cannot if they're siblings of each other. Like we can't send one from, I mean, these are not components, but let's say this header was a component. We couldn't send one from header to hello world. But a parent can pass to its child. But it can't go the other way around. Like a child cannot send a message to the parent. So if the parent says to hello world, well, I want to say name equals just some like random name. This is a property. Now this will be available on properties in this hello world component. And properties do not need to be strings. They can be numbers, they can be objects, they can be functions. So a common pattern is to put the state of an app into the app class. And then create functions that will update that state for you and pass them in properties to the child components. So let's access this name from inside of hello world. If I want, instead of this.state name, enter your name, I can have this initially be this.props.name.
How do you pass it props?
It is this dot cannot read name of undefined. Props is not here, unfortunately.
If you put props in that constructor,
Yeah, it should be here. And then I don't need this anymore. Oh yeah, I need to pass to super.
what does super do?
Super. So it's a object-oriented thing. It's calling its parent. It's doing some magic with the component. Let's all stretch and get up. So super is basically doing something special with the extended class. That will be something that you learn when you go through object-oriented programming.
So that sounds like it's something that we need to do prior to doing this.
No. So here's the thing. It's possible to do this without understanding how it's working. I would say there's a point at which you will reach like a glass ceiling without understanding it. But you don't need it to begin. In fact, sometimes it might be easier just to do this first and then get questions, get a list of intelligent questions to ask, and then that you can bring when to learning OOP. All right, so I want to open this up to questions about React, about properties, about components, and about other things. Because this may or may not have blown your minds.
Yeah, blew my mind.
Okay.
Mind blown.
Yes. It's very common. Like, it's not easy to just like, okay, here's everything you need to know about a front-end framework. Now you can build anything in the world. It's a very complicated tool.
Can I see app.js again?
Absolutely.
So why have a state separate state for every component and not just have like a state in that app.js?
Because you want to be able to update specific areas of the page as opposed to updating the entire page. Am I correct on that?
The answer is yes. Sometimes you do want states shared between different things. And the general consensus that I've found out is have state as close to the individual components as possible, but far enough away that all of the necessary components have access to it.
For instance, when you put in that timer on the name, it says enter your name, and then 3 seconds later, Brooks came up. Like that was the only component or part of the page that refreshed. Like
Sure,
the whole page didn't refresh.
Couldn't you have that in a state in the app and then have it only do that?
Because
So
then the whole page becomes the state, right?
yes,
But it
so
wouldn't-
that is a negative thing.
But it wouldn't, if you set the timeout to only do that one H1 tag.
Right, but he's saying, so the state, whatever the state is all of the information that's within that state. So even if this one line of text changed, it would reload all of this other information because that other information is part of that state.
Doesn't React know, it only refreshes what changes in the state, not
Right.
the rest of it.
It refreshes the state.
So I'm going to pause that to clarify this a little bit. When state updates on a component, it reruns the render function of the component whose state's changed.
Okay.
So if the app component's state changes, it reruns all of this. Now all of your components are going to be loaded from here. So all of the components will update.
So you can have multiple states within a larger state.
You can have multiple states within a larger state.
So
Now,
I think that was kind of going back to what you were saying, right?
yes.
But like from the short time I've been on these videos, it's like they're saying that like you would essentially assign keys that way so that React knows, okay, this changed in the state, so re-render that, but like don't re-render all the other shit that didn't change.
And this is an inherent liability limitation of state in React because we have to go pretty high up usually to make it worthwhile. Brent?
Do not worry about performance.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm not.
Performance because, again, like, not React 101, but, like, behind all of this is actually just updating a virtual DOM, which is, like, really fast, and then comparing that and only making changes.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to draw anything to an actual page. It's just like doing a dry run behind the scenes, if you will.
Exactly. So, like, yeah, the way that you were exactly right, you try to push the state down as far as possible, but usually that ends up being like the root of the entire app because
Right.
so many different things need it. So a lot of these are full app re-renders, but it happens in like microseconds, so we don't really care. And then when you get into Redux, there's even more optimization, so it is just looking at the pieces. So don't worry, don't change your state due to performance concerns. be premature optimization.
Was a quote, pre-optimization is the normal or something like that?
Yeah.
So something
I thought it was state. Yeah. They're like number one and number two.
All right, let's get back on topic now. But thank you, Brent. You had a question.
Yeah, I guess, when you're making these components or whatever, like that's the, what'd you say, anatomy, class, app, or whatever the name of the component is, extend, component, render, return, export, default app, like, is that always going to look the same?
I wish I could say yes. So React in true JavaScript function has allowed you to do it in multiple ways. These are class methods of building a React component.
And this goes back to the
object-oriented style of React development. This is the way that the Create React app sets you up with. So that's why I suggest that you keep on going with it, because it's just the lowest bar to entry for that. There are classless ways of doing it also. And there is an entire religious war about which one is better.
So I could use all class.
You can use all class and everything would be fine.
Okay, and that's what it looks like.
And this is what it would look like.
for
Every
class.
single component would look like this.
And the other way is functional.
It's more functional, and there's no classes whatsoever. And you can still do state-like things in those too. So,
like just the render function is what those kind of components are.
What's the harm in using all classes?
so
You guys have it?
sometimes, well, in my mind, there's no harm. It's not really going to affect your performance in a super negative way. Some people are extremely adverse to classes, to the point where they'd say you're a horrible person for even thinking about using them. And some people are the exact opposite. You're a horrible person for not using classes. The end result is when you get a job, if they're using React, you will just use whatever system they have.
The other main thing is when you start building larger apps, there's this idea of single source of truth. So your top level components have state, and then everything else is just a dumb component that gets state from the parent. So if it's a dumb component, then there's no need to be a class because it's just getting props. And that's usually the main reason, because if it's not setting state, it's not doing anything special, there are no functions defined on it, it should just be a dumb function that returns a render.
I guess that's what I was trying to ask earlier, is why would you need this separate state for that?
This is, again, like you said, a religious war. It goes back to Turing thesis. The origin of computer science goes around this. The idea is, that's why I said state is the root of all evil. 99% of bugs are due to something being in the incorrect state. How many times do you pick something, but the class, CSS class doesn't get added or whatever, that's state. That class, whether that's there or not, state. So functional programmers are like mathematicians. You can't reassign x in algebra. X equals 5, x always equals 5 for the entire. So functional programmers are state is evil, eliminate it entirely. Object-oriented programmers are state is evil, encapsulate it into the smallest possible area. And so that's I think the word that Brooks was being nice enough not to use. Talking about how to keep state within these components. The name for that is encapsulation. So either way, the idea is be aware of your state, have a really logical way of handling it, and don't let it just randomly percolate throughout your entire app.
And I guess to your question, then, people that are hardcore about single source of truth, all the state is in one place, you might still have someone that says, oh, well, this component has a checkbox in it, and there's no need to put whether the checkbox is checked or not in the main state, so we can just have local state in this component.
That's my question. Is smaller toggle switches within state
And
smaller components?
Some people are with the idea of let's be pragmatic about it and not put everything in state. Some things might exist in the components themselves.
So in other words, it just comes down to personal preference.
Go ahead.
I have a razor for this, to divide it into two camps. I say there's persistent state and there's view state, or transient state. So like persistent state is something that like, if you reasonably hit refresh, it would reappear on your screen the same way. Or if two people were browsing to the same page, they'd expect to see it. Something that you store in your database. This is persistent state, and it belongs like in the root. What you're typing into a text box, the position of the scroll bar, like anything that you can refresh and go away, that's view state. Like, just keep it in that component. Don't worry about it. It's not important. If you want to hang on to it for later, probably persistence.
Here's the biggest thing. Nobody is going to expect you to know the perfect design pattern for React, or for any front-end framework right away. Especially as beginners, sometimes as seniors don't even know what they want. And the biggest favor you can do for yourselves is get used to the idea of refactoring your code, including major refactors.
So know how to do it both ways.
And don't be afraid if you put it and you're like, we don't need this in a parent state. All the component just needs to keep care of itself. Don't worry that in 20 minutes you might realize that it needs to be in a parent state. And oh no, you now have a bunch of work to do to rip that out of that component and put it into the parent component. Get good at that. And then you won't have problems because you won't be freezing at the starting the develop phase. Just build it. The React entire claim to fame is fast building. You can refactor if you need to.
We're sculptors, and our medium is clay, not marble.
Yes. And Git is a tool. Do not forget to Git, commit, and push all the time. Constantly. One last thing that I just remembered is that this is not super compatible with Heroku.
Oh,
It's somewhat compatible. But, right off the bat, you can change things, but right now, this is an unoptimized, everything. If you want to optimize it, you do an npm run build, like it's telling me right here, and it's going to create a bunch of files that just run off of there, and it's all optimized and everything else, but doesn't have a server to really run it. You have to configure Heroku a little bit differently to work out of the box.
I would say if you're my student, don't ever deploy a React site to Heroku. You should build it and deploy it to Firebase or Surge. It's still, even though you're using Node and all these tools, at the end of the day, it's still just a static site. So build it and then deploy it to a static place.
Exactly. So if I do npm run build, you do the dance while it compiles. So usually in JavaScript, we're not big on compiling because everything's interpreted right then, but this is one of the few times that you get to sit there and wait. Okay, it's done. It tells me, hey, look, it is now in a new folder that just got created called build. If you take a look in here, it created all of this horrible looking code. It's horrible looking because all of the JavaScript has been put into a single file, including React source code. And merges it together into a single file.
Command F for Brooks, see if you can find it.
Oh yeah? Command F.
Yeah, it should be in that file.
This might actually crash Atom because Atom's terrible with large files like this. Oh, there it is. Take a look at this. Return SetState name Brooks.
Pro, it has taken this and transpiled it down to vanilla JavaScript that will work the same way in every browser. So you get to use all the latest sexy features like fat arrows and stuff, but behind the scenes it'll still run on IE8 or whatever terrible browser you're testing with.
All right. So I don't there is nothing else you need before you start playing with React. And I would now suggest before you request any other React or OOP or anything else, play with this. Just play with Create React App. Try to create one of the early drill, the HTML drills in React. Just do that and just play with it, and you can get it going.
So when do we know when we need a separate component and when we don't?
When do you know if you need a separate component? If it's logically different. That's how I visualize components, is if they're just logically not really together. And
like if you were adding another H1, you just use the same component that you already made, and then just change the name in it.
yeah, I could like copy over and create another component for another H1 tag. There's all sorts of like theories. I wouldn't even like think about going and reading the blog posts about how to like really optimize components until you understand by having built some basic React apps. Brent.
I don't know if I should interject now. Like, I would say like this is probably like a healthy size component. I've seen components that are like 5 pages long. Like if you start like pretending like this is an HTML page and then like writing it all in one file, then you're probably using React wrong. Like you want more smaller components.
You can always make it smaller. You can always keep it big. I would say the rule of 3 takes into effect here. The second you've done something 3 times in a row, it should probably just be a single component you can pull in and pass it properties to make it have the appropriate thing. All right, play with this, start to get an understanding of it, and then we can